Godfrey of Bouillon, leader of the First Crusade. Being the middle child in the Middle Ages meant living in the shadow of the firstborn, who in 99% of cases obtained the greatest privileges. For overcoming adversity and being the spitting image of a true Christian knight of the Middle Ages, Godfrey of Bouillon is the protagonist of this edition of History Dad. Early years. Although Godfrey's exact place and date of birth are not known, it is believed from later records that he was born between 1058 and 1060, probably in Boulogne-sur-Mer, near the English Channel. He was a member of the House of Bouillon, a prestigious family of the French nobility who held the earldom in that region. His father, Eustace II de Bouillon, was not only the most powerful man in the country, but also owned numerous lands in England thanks to the political alliances he had achieved through his first marriage, to which he had no descendants. When Eustace II was widowed, he married Ida of Lorraine, with whom he had Godfrey. In order, the first of the sons was Eustace III, who not only obtained the same name of his father, but also inherited his noble title of Count of Boulogne. For his part, Godfrey inherited the Duchy of Lower Lorraine and the Mark of Antwerp, but it was not an inheritance he obtained directly from his father, but it was Godfrey the Hunchback, his uncle, who gave him these titles as an inheritance, since he had no descendants. However, the Duchy of Lower Lorraine was not given to him until 1082, since Emperor Henry IV granted this title to Conrad, his son, for 6 years. Because of this, Godfrey only kept the Mark of Antwerp until Henry IV granted him again Lower Lorraine as a token of gratitude for the times that Godfrey fought with him, first in Easter and then in the siege of Rome. Finally, Baldwin I, the youngest of the sons of Eustace II, did not receive a noble title, since, as was common among the younger sons, he received ecclesiastical training to entrust himself to such labours. In any case, Baldwin I would go down in history for other reasons that we will detail later. First Crusade. Godfrey was a deeply religious man who lived in consequence of his devotion, an issue that he made clear throughout his life in several of the decisions he made, and that we will see in this video. Although making a place for himself in the nobility was not easy, he did not hesitate for a moment to part with every one of his belongings to contribute financially to the imminent war that was about to break out in Jerusalem, the First Crusade. Godfrey had fought against the papacy when he joined Emperor Henry IV, but he literally sold everything he had when he heard Pope Urban II preach about the Crusade at the Council of Clermont held in November 1095. Approximately 7 months later, in August 1096, Godfrey left for the Crusade commanding an army of 40,000 men, together with his brothers Eustace and Baldwin. According to the chronicle published by Robert of Molesmes, Godfrey led his men along the route of Charlemagne, supposedly so named by Urban II. The Council of Clermont had established that the Christians could not fight among themselves on Mondays, Tuesdays and Wednesdays, a strategy used so that they could concentrate solely on the war to be fought in Jerusalem. Because of this, Godfrey had some complaints from the ecclesiastics, since he could not prevent his men from carrying out some violent entries against other Christians along the way. In November of the same year, they finally reached Constantinople. According to the record, he was the first crusader to arrive, and his strong convictions soon caused displeasure to the Byzantine Emperor Alexius I, who wanted Godfrey to swear allegiance to the Byzantine Empire so that he could claim the victories of Godfrey's army as his own. After some back and forth between the two, Godfrey finally gave in and swore allegiance to the empire, since he had no other choice. In fact, each of the leaders of the crusade had to take the same oath as they arrived in the empire. Once this was accomplished, Godfrey wasted no more time and continued towards his destination, which is why he was the first to arrive at the Arch of Nicaea and organised the main contingent of the Crusaders after taking the city. Battle of Dorilea. With Nicaea conquered, the Crusaders decided to divide the contingent to facilitate the provisioning of the troops, since while advancing through the Anatolian desert towards the Holy Land, they realised that it was best to separate and meet later, so as not to be delayed. Near Dorilea, Bohemond of Taranto set up a camp to rest his men, unaware that Sultan Khalid Arslan I was preparing his forces to attack the camp. On July 1st, 1097, Bohemon's men awoke from their slumber in the most terrible way, being attacked by thousands of cavalrymen. The Turks swept through the camp with determination, without the Crusaders having time to organise. In fact, some even took up arms. The Turks hardly lost any soldiers, while the Crusaders did not fail to suffer considerable casualties, for while the cavalry razed the camp, a group of talented archers rained down arrows on the place. The Crusaders were barely resisting the attack while begging for a miracle, as it was impossible for them to survive such an attack. For them, what happened next was a divine answer to their pleas. Godfrey and his cavalry advanced violently on the archers and decimated their attacks, helping the Crusaders to reorganise and quickly go from a handful of 5,000 men to an army of over 40,000. Seeing this, the Turks knew they had to retreat from the scene, as they were at a considerable numerical disadvantage. They seized the exact moment and undertook a strategic retreat, as these armies were not moving as a joint military force, but as divisions making lightning attacks on camps and caravans. Both sides suffered considerable casualties, despite the fact that the combat lasted approximately 2 hours. Once the battle was over, the Crusaders marched back to the Holy Land with morale soaring, and Godfrey won the admiration of all. Taking Jerusalem. After this victory, they did not have many more difficulties along the way, only a confrontation against a contingent of about 12,000 men that they managed to defeat. Arriving at Antioch, they carried out a long siege that lasted 8 months. Antioch was so large that the Crusader army was not large enough to surround it. Nagisian, governor of Antioch, knew that Bohemond and Raymond IV of Toulouse were slowly beginning to divide, as both wanted to be declared rulers of Antioch if they took the city. Finally, after months of planning and divisions, the Crusaders managed to conquer the city, although this would be more of a problem than a solution, according to several historians, as they suffered many casualties, not only in battle, but a plague of typhus struck the troops and put them in trouble. Raymond and Bohemond continued to argue over who should take the city, which is why his men began to disown their leadership and preferred to follow Godfrey, who wasted no time in this and constantly insisted that they should continue on to Jerusalem. Months later, the Crusaders resumed their main mission, commanded by Godfrey, while Bohemond remained in Antioch as governor. Jerusalem was contested by the Egyptian Fatimids and the Syrian Turks, so the Crusaders laid siege to the city for a month. Of the initial large army, only 12,000 men remained, so victory literally seemed an impossible task. A new unexpected event occurred on July 15th, 1099, as the Crusaders received unexpected help from Genoese troops led by William Embriacus, who had begun a private expedition to the Holy Land. After having been very active in the siege of the city, Godfrey was the first to enter the city. After a bloody struggle between the two sides, the Crusaders took Jerusalem. Defender of the Holy Sepulchre. On July 22nd, a week after the conquest, Godfrey was elected as ruler of the place, since Raymond had refused the position. However, as expected, Godfrey refused to accept the title of King in Jerusalem, since in his words, he refused to wear a crown of gold where Christ had worn a crown of thorns. Because of this, he adopted the title of Advocatus Sancti Sepulchri, and ruled the city as a true defender, since he died defending the city a year later, in July 1100, repelling an attack by the Egyptian Fatimids. After his death, he was succeeded by his brother Baldwin, who did choose to be crowned King of Jerusalem and ruled under the name Baldwin I, putting an end to the title created by Godfrey. Godfrey was immortalised as the exemplary personification of knighthood and went down in history as the first regent of Jerusalem and true leader of the Crusades. The respect and admiration that the Western society of the Middle Ages felt for Godfrey was only comparable to the fervour he felt for his convictions, as he died without even having children due to his determination. Don't close the video yet. Before you go, please subscribe and leave us a like if you like the content. It will help us to grow and continue making much more content. Now, without further ado, we say goodbye.